Chapter 1. A Moment of Shattered Calm. The terminal buzzed with the familiar chaos of travel announcements crackling over the intercom, suitcases rolling across the polished floor, and voices overlapping in a symphony of departure. It was a place where routine promised safety, where people moved with purpose toward gates and destinations. But on this day, amid the clamor, a single moment would fracture that illusion of order. 11-year-old Lila Harper stood out in the crowd, her bright yellow dress a burst of sunshine against the gray monotony of the airport. She radiated a quiet optimism, her small suitcase clutched in one hand as she navigated the sea of travelers. Her parents had taught her to carry herself with confidence, and she did head high, steps sure ready for the short flight to visit her grandmother. But that confidence would soon be tested. As Lila approached the security checkpoint, she noticed the officer ahead. His name tag read Officer Daniel Pierce, though she wouldn't learn that until later. He was a tall man with a stern jaw and eyes that seemed to scan the world for threats. But to Lila, he would become something else entirely. "Papers," he barked, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. Lila stepped forward, unfazed, and handed over her boarding pass and ID. She'd done this before. Traveling alone wasn't new to her. Her father had drilled her on the process. Stay calm, be polite, keep your documents ready. She followed the script perfectly, but Officer Pierce didn't. His gaze lingered on her, narrowing as he flipped through her papers. "Where are you going?" he asked, his tone sharp with something Lila couldn't quite place. Distrust, maybe? She answered clearly, "To see my grandma in Chicago." Her voice was steady, but inside, a flicker of confusion stirred. Why was he looking at her like that? He didn't respond right away. Instead, he tilted his head, studying her as if she were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Alone?" he pressed, his skepticism growing. Lila nodded, her small frame unwavering. "My dad's meeting me there later." She wasn't lying. Her father, James Harper, worked long hours and had arranged for her to fly ahead. But Pierce's expression darkened, his hand hovering over her ID like it was evidence of some unspoken crime. Around them, the terminal pulsed with life. Passengers shuffled forward, casting quick glances at the unfolding scene. Whispers rippled through the line: curiosity, unease, a sense that something wasn't right. Lila felt the weight of their eyes, but she didn't falter. "Not yet. Step aside," Pierce ordered, his voice clipped. "We need to check this further." Lila's heart thudded, a sudden drumbeat of doubt. She didn't understand. She'd followed every rule, every step. Why was this happening? Her mind raced, replaying her father's advice. "If something feels wrong, call me. No matter what." She reached into her pocket, fingers brushing the cool surface of her phone. Pierce's eyes flicked to her hand, his posture stiffening. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Lila met his gaze, her own eyes steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I'm calling my dad," she said simply. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration. In that charged instant, the air thickened with tension. Pierce's face tightened, a mix of authority and uncertainty warring beneath his stern facade. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a chorus of disbelief and intrigue. Lila pressed the call button, her small act of defiance transforming her from just another traveler into something more: a spark of resistance against a system she didn't yet fully understand. Chapter 2. A Father's Instinct. Miles away, in a glass-walled office overlooking the city, James Harper sat amid a storm of his own. As a senior official in national security, his days were a blur of encrypted emails, urgent briefings, and hushed conversations about threats most people never knew existed. His desk was cluttered with reports, his phone buzzing incessantly. But when it rang with Lila's name on the screen, everything else fell away. "Dad, I need you." Her voice came through, clear and urgent, cutting through the static of his world. James straightened, his pulse quickening. He knew that Tony, it wasn't panic, not yet, but it was close. "What's happening, Lila?" he asked, already reaching for his coat. She explained quickly: security, an officer, questions that didn't make sense. James listened, his mind sharpening with every word. He'd seen enough in his career to recognize the undertone of bias, the subtle ways it crept into systems meant to protect. And now it was touching his daughter. "Stay on the line. Don't let them intimidate you." He was out the door before she could respond, his strides purposeful as he barked orders to his assistant. "Give me a car to the airport. Now, back at the terminal, Lila held the phone to her ear, her father's voice a lifeline in the chaos. Pierce watched her, his expression unreadable. "Who are you calling?" he asked again, his tone sharper this time. Lila didn't flinch. "My dad," she repeated. "He works in Homeland Security." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Pierce's jaw twitched, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. For the first time, his certainty wavered. Around them, the crowd grew restless, phones slipping out of pockets as people began recording. This wasn't just a delay, Anna Maria, it was a story. Chapter 3: The Officer's Dilemma. Daniel Pierce had spent 15 years in security, trained to see the world in black and white, threat or no threat, rule or violation. But standing before Lila, her yellow dress a defiant splash of color against his gray worldview, something shifted. She wasn't what he'd expected. Not the nervous fidgeting of someone hiding something, not the defiance of a troublemaker. Just a kid, calm and composed, staring back at him with eyes that held no friendly questions. "Why me?" they seemed to ask. And for the first time in years, Pierce didn't have an answer. He'd followed protocol, hadn't he? Suspicion was part of the job. Check the anomalies, question the outliers. But as Lila spoke into her phone, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands, he felt the ground beneath his assumptions crack. Had he misjudged her? Or had the system misjudged him, shaping him into something he didn't recognize? "Explain yourself." A new voice cut through, deep and commanding. Pierce turned to see James Harper striding toward them, his suit crisp but his eyes blazing. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing authority in his presence. "Why is my daughter being detained?" Pierce opened his mouth, then closed it. The rehearsed line, standard procedure, sir, felt hollow. James didn't wait for an answer. "She's 11. She's traveling to see her grandmother. What threat do you see here?" His tone was measured, but it carried the weight of a man who'd spent years holding power accountable. Lila stood beside her father, her small hand slipping into his. Pierce saw it then, the bond, the trust, the quiet strength she'd drawn from him. And in that moment, he felt the first pang of something he hadn't felt in years: shame. Chapter 4: Ripples of Change. What happened next unfolded like a slow burn. James's intervention forced an immediate review. A supervisor called, statements taken, apologies murmured. But it didn't end there. Lila's story spread, first through whispers in the terminal, then across social media as grainy videos hit the internet. By nightfall, it was trending, justice for Lila. At home that evening, Lila sat on the couch, her yellow dress swapped for pajamas. James knelt beside her, his voice soft. "You were brave today. I'm proud of you." She nodded, but her eyes were distant. "Why did he pick me, Dad? What did I do wrong?" James hesitated, searching for words to explain a truth he'd spent his career fighting. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said finally. "Sometimes people see what they're taught to see, not what's really there. But you showed them something different." In the days that followed, the incident became a flashpoint. News outlets picked it up, civil rights groups rallied, and James found himself at the center of a storm he hadn't anticipated. He spoke at press conferences, his words deliberate. "This isn't just about my daughter. It's about a system that fails too many." Meanwhile, Pierce wrestled with his own reckoning. Alone in his apartment, he replayed the encounter, each memory a splinter in his conscience. He'd followed the rules, but had they been right? The question gnawed at him until, in a quiet moment, he made a choice to speak, to change, to be part of something better.